What is going on, guys? Welcome to another video. Now today's video we're going to talk about some of the common aiming problems that I've been seeing a lot of players comment in my previous videos about how they're having this issue with their aim, whether it be strafing left and right, trying to trace people. What are the best practices that you can do when you get into gunfights that's going to help better your accuracy when you shoot off your gun? And I want to show you guys some common practices that's going to help you with those issues that you're having. Now mind you though, this is for players who has their settings already locked down in regards to how it feels for them. So that means they already got their vertical and horizontal sense up, they already got their ADS sense right, they already got their dead zone right, they chose the proper aim response curve that's going to work well for them. And because you have these settings down, now you are up to this point where you're going to take those settings and put it even into more practice when you're engaging in your gunfights. Now if this is your first tutorial video that you've seen of me, I want to show you these videos right over here. This is going to talk about your aim response curve. This is going to talk about your controller settings, giving you a brief description of what each setting is going to do for your aim. And then we have another video that's going to help you understand this specific setting that's going to help you control recoil better. So I'm going to talk about 4 specific solutions that you can put into practice that's going to help both your long range fights and your close range gunfights in regards to weapon accuracy. We're going to talk about problems where players have issues trying to follow enemy players that are quickly moving left and right. We're going to talk about how their long range accuracy is going to be failing when they are on controller. We're going to be talking about centering today, and then we're going to be talking about the constant re-ADSing that you see certain players do and why it benefits them and why it's going to benefit you in that gunfight. Alright, so let's start with the first problem that players are having, which is trying to trace players left and right. Right? Some players already have the ways to be able to counter recoil properly, right? They don't have to worry about the recoil control. But now it's trying to simultaneously worry about pulling down on the sticks for the recoil control, but also tracing their targets left and right. In my opinion, the most common reason is because they're using the right aiming stick too much. Let me explain. So here's a common rule of thumb that I like to say is that when you're aiming, you are using your strafing stick and your aiming stick. So both your left and right analog to trace your targets. But it is very situational dependent on how much pressure that you should apply both towards your left and right sticks. When you're within your close SMG engagements, I'm talking about maybe 10 meters and below, so very short, very close, you are not trying to overemphasize on your right aiming stick. What you want to do is try to follow them through strafing. So instead of following the player by pushing left and right on the aiming stick, you are strafing left and right to try and trace the player. Now this does not mean that I don't want you to use the right stick to trace at all. If we want to simplify it into percentage, guys, right? On your left strafing, you should use maybe about 60 to 70% of what you're pressing on the sticks. But on your right aiming stick, this is where you're going to only use 30 to 40% of your pressure. So when you apply this into practice, right, you are tracing them by strafing, but also slightly pushing on the aiming stick. The reason why players are still having issues trying to trace them left and right is because they're not doing enough strafing and they're trying to trace them strictly on the aim stick itself, and that throws any player off. Now another reason why I want you to focus on your strafing is because you want to take advantage of both aim assist types. You want to take advantage of rotational aim assist and regular aim assist. And if players are strictly trying to follow and trace players with your right aim stick, you're only going to get regular aim assist. So for those of you who really don't know the difference, when you're just aiming at a player and not moving, okay, this is regular aim assist. This is just a slight pull down that you're going to get where it slightly follows the player. But rotational aim assist is what the word itself means, is that you are rotating, you are moving at the same time while you're aiming. So just by simply moving, you see how there's a slight magnetization to the enemy? That is rotational aim assist. But remember guys, it's not either or on what is actually used. Both AA and rotational aim assist can be used at the same time, and that's why I recommend when you are strafing and aiming as you're tracing the player, you want to have that extra pull. If you don't have that extra pull, that's the reason why you don't feel a lock when you're trying to trace them left and right. So to summarize all of this, guys, when you are trying to trace your players left and right, you are utilizing both sticks, not just your right stick. If you feel like you're overshooting or undershooting too much because you're having a hard time tracing them, it's because you're putting too much pressure on the right stick and you are not strafing with your left stick enough. I just realized how long I took with the first tip, and it seems like this is going to be a long video, but stay with me guys. I promise if you are very new to Call of Duty and you are having these common issues, I'm trying to explain it the most simplified way that I can, that most other creators are not going to tell you. They're just going to say, hey, try these numbers out, boom, your aim is going to be perfect. But no, I'm not like that. I'm going to nerd out and I'm going to tell you these tips and why these specific tips are going to help you. Now, the second tip I'm going to talk about is very specific to certain players. These are for players who don't like to use red dots, who don't like to use iron sights. They're more like long range engagement fighters where they'll use the 2x, the 3x, the 4x, or hell, they're even snipers themselves. And I think when they're using these type of scopes, they should be mindful that you can change your ADS aim sensitivity per optic that you use. At first, when I learned about that, I'm thinking, okay, well, why do I need different aim sensitivities for the optic that I'm going to use? Like, it should be just same across the board. But have you ever taken notice that when you were in your close range engagements, you wish your ADS sense was a little bit higher so that you can move faster? But then you compare those fights to your long range engagements when you're using your 3x and 4x and you're maybe sniping on the big BR map or just sniping in general, and you wish that your ADS was a little bit slower because you're overshooting your targets. That is the reason why they have the per optic ADS sensitivity option that I'm going to show you here. So if you go into your controller settings and you go into aiming, there's going to be an aiming advanced setting. Now, if you go to the bottom of the aiming advanced setting, there's custom sensitivity per zoom. Mine's is off because I've practiced enough with my aim where it doesn't really matter what scope that I use. I can still kind of adjust the way that I'm fighting each enemy, whether it be close range or long range. But if you're a beginner player and you don't have that custom set down, what you can do is turn this bad boy on and you can actually change your ADS sensitivity multiplier per zoom that you're using. Now, I do want to take note though that when you try to adjust it to these specific settings, you need to mentally note down how your ADS speed changes when you pick up a gun. If you're not taking note of how fast or slow that your aim becomes based on the scope that you pick up on that ground loot weapon, that can get very confusing. So take this with a grain of salt. If this helps you, great. If it doesn't, then my solution for that, for it to actually help you, is to gain a little bit of repetition and know how you need to adjust your aim based on the gun that you pick up and the scope that it has. So if you wanted recommendations, right, if I go to custom sensitivity per zoom, with your iron sights, you want to be a little bit faster when you're in your close range gunfights. So anything that's ADS sense multiplier low zoom, which is I'd say a red dot and below, you want to keep this fairly low. So either 90, maybe 85, whatever it feels good for you. Even if you bring it down to 75, I would say do not bring it below 70. That is going to be too slow even for beginner players. But if you notice when you're engaging enemy players at long range distances, I'm talking about 40, 50, 60 meters, right? You want a little bit of that slowdown on your scopes. So what you can do is go to your 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, which is your other scopes that you can use for your ARs, and you can bring this down a little bit lower. So play around with this, right? Find the sensitivity that works for you. Get a custom loadout, put on a 2x, 3x, 4x, whatever that you normally use, go into the firing range and test out how fast your scopes move, right? If it's too fast, lower your ADS sense. If it's too slow and you feel like you're not able to line up your targets fast enough, increase your ADS sense. All players are different and they all start out differently and they learn things about their aim at different rates. So like I said, find what works for you. Now, the third thing that I want to talk about is centering. Now, I know centering is a most commonly talked about things a lot of players overly use. It's almost cliche, right? But the thing is, a lot of people don't actually center where they need to center. You'll see players moving across the map like this, where their aim reticule is looking towards the ground. Now, their eyes may be looking up over here, right? They're scanning for targets, but their aim is preset down here. Now, what happens when they come across the target and they start to aim down? They're aiming down at the ground. Imagine if you actually had kept your center dot, right, and you're moving and you see targets, you're already in the position to shoot them. Now, centering doesn't apply to just only when you're moving around the map. When you're going through any angles, any doorways, right, any hallways, any run routes that a player is going to have, you want to make sure that your aim is centered there. So for example, if I'm coming right around this bus, right, I am angling, I am centering where the players are commonly running through. You're either going to center down this pathway, you're either going to center onto this door, you're either going to center onto the second story window. Why? Because that's where your common enemies are going to be shown at. Of course, there's other pathways, right? They could be coming on the left side of this bus right here. They could be coming down the middle on this side. There's only so many angles that you can pick. But it's way better than just coming around the corner and just doing an aim down sight, not trying to predict which way that the enemy could be coming through. Because what's the point of wasting time shooting here when the enemy is already there? Now, not only you're here, you still have to find a way to line up your shot to go there, left here, or at the top. So if anything, if you want to be very specific, you can pre-aim here, you can hit that window, you can hit that door, and then you can hit your left hand side over here. That is the idea of centering, is always making sure that your ridicule is going to be on target wherever the enemy shows up. All right, now this fourth tip is going to be called re-ADSing. I don't know what's a better way to explain it, but that's what essentially is, your re-ADSing. Now this is going to be hard to replicate because this is not a live player, right? This is a bot. He's on casual difficulty. The reason why it's hard to replicate it with a bot is because the bots don't move like movement demons. You're ADSing. The reason why you see people do this, right? They're boom, 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 even in long or close range fights, is because so that they can adjust and follow. Your ADS aim speed is not faster than your look speed, right? Your look speed is a lot more faster. That's the reason why people need to ADS when they're fighting movement demons, because if a movement demon decides to slide cancel left or right to you, where they're moving really quick in succession, if you keep your aim down sights the entire time, it's going to be super hard to trace them. That's the term that players use when they say, hey, I just broke your camera. It's because your aim was not keeping up with their movement. So when they suddenly slide cancel left or right, you are un-ADSing, moving to match them, and then re-ADSing. So you would un-ADS, move, hit, 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 rather than trying to go left and right, because when you're going left and right like this, it's not, you're not going to move fast enough to trace them. So this final tip is a really good solution to try and implement in practice against movement players, because these movement players know that beginner players will still stay ADS the entire time, which makes it easier for them to slide past you. Coming out of aim and you're re-aiming down your gun, that's how you can follow their movement if they're going to try slide left or right to you. But yeah, so those are my tips, guys, that I think is going to help a lot of players fix some of the common issues that they have with trying to trace their targets, especially when they're moving left and right. We're going to be talking about how you need to strafe more so that you can utilize more rotational aim assist and regular aim assist. We talked about how we can adjust your per optic ADS sensitivity, so that way, based on the scopes that you're using, you don't have to adjust so hard or you end up overshooting or undershooting your targets. We talk about making sure that we are centering the entire time, so that way we don't have to adjust more than we need to when we get into these gunfights. And the last thing is talking about re-ADSing and adjusting your aim each time, especially when you come across a movement demon, so that way you can follow and trace them more effectively. But if anything, guys, that is all that we have for this video today. Drop it in the comments below if these tips are going to help you or if you didn't know about it. And if you guys are already experienced players that are watching this, drop another comment down below. Let us know the tips that you think is going to help our beginner players out there. If anything, if you did like the video, please drop a like on the video. We need to get more eyes so that more players can learn on how to better their aim in Call of Duty. And if you enjoy the content overall, drop a sub to the channel. We'd love to see you here for the next video, okay? As always, stay pure, stay noble, and hashtag bring back honest gaming. Later, guys.